This story begins on a quiet morning when the house was still and the air felt heavy. I was sitting at a small table waiting for my wife to come and talk with me. I had called her again for peace, not to fight, not to blame, just to talk like two adults who once promised to love each other. My heart was tired, but I still hoped. I believed that if we spoke calmly, something good could still grow. When she sat down, her face was hard, her eyes avoided mine. I spoke gently, choosing my words like fragile glass. I asked where we went wrong and how we could fix it together. She answered with sharp words and cold silence. Each sentence felt like a stone thrown at my chest. The more I tried to explain my heart, the more distant she became. Soon, the room felt smaller and tighter. When we stood up from the table, nothing was solved. In fact, things felt worse than before. I watched her walk away, and something inside me sank deeper than ever. If you are watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you are watching my folktale story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. That morning taught me a painful truth. Talking does not always bring peace. Sometimes it shows how far apart two hearts have already gone. I sat there alone, asking myself how many more times I could call for peace and leave bleeding inside.
Not long after that morning, I heard words that broke me in a new way. They were not spoken to my face. They were spoken behind my back. I later found out that my wife had told her sister that I was unhappy for only 3 reasons. She said I wanted her salary sent to my account every month. She said I expected her rich brothers to give me a job. She said I was jealous because she worked with the central bank while I struggled with many small skills. When I heard this, my heart shook. These things were not true. I never married her for money. I never asked for her salary. I never begged her brothers for work. I married her because I loved her and believed she would be a good partner. Knowing she believed such things hurt more than any insult she had said to my face. It meant she never truly knew me. It meant every argument we had was built on a lie in her mind. I felt naked and misunderstood. I wondered how someone I prayed with could think so low of me. That day, I realized something important. You can live with someone and still be a stranger in their thoughts. The pain of being wrongly judged by the person you love can quietly destroy your strength without making a sound. As days passed, I began to look back at our marriage with new eyes. I saw how many times I had kept quiet to keep peace. I remembered how often I chose patience over pride. I stayed faithful, even when affection faded. I prayed when words failed. I never raised my voice. I never looked outside our marriage. I believed that love meant endurance. I believed that if I stayed good, things would change. But goodness did not soften her heart. Instead, it made her more certain that I had an agenda. She never said sorry, no matter how serious the issue was. At first, I thought she was just stubborn. Now I understood. She believed she had done nothing wrong. In her mind, she was defending herself from a man she thought wanted to use her. This realization hurt deeply. It meant my sacrifices were unseen. My faithfulness meant nothing. I felt like a man standing in the rain, holding an umbrella for someone who believed he wanted to steal their shoes. Slowly, I felt something break inside me. Not anger, not hate, just a deep tiredness. I began to fear that love alone was not enough when trust was already dead. And when trust dies, marriage starts to bleed quietly.
One evening, another wound opened without warning. We attended a child's birthday party full of laughter and noise. While people talked and ate, one of my wife's old schoolmates spoke about their school days. He mentioned their graduation year with excitement. I froze. The year did not match what I knew. As they talked, more details came out. Awards, teachers, memories. My wife suddenly tried to leave the discussion. She pulled my hand and said we were late, but it was too late for me. The truth had already entered my ears. That night, I did the math again and again. Slowly, it became clear. My wife was almost 9 years older than me. She had never told me. I sat quietly, shocked. Everything made sense now. Her fear, her distance, her belief that I could not truly love her. She must have thought no man would choose her freely. That thought broke my heart. Not because of her age, but because she never trusted my choice. She believed I came with hidden plans.
That night, I felt like our marriage started on silence instead of truth. And silence, I learned, grows into misunderstanding. After that discovery, our home grew colder. The bedroom became quiet. Touch disappeared. Even smiles became rare. We had one child, a baby boy, but even his presence could not heal the space between us. I felt unwanted, not just as a husband, but as a man. I stopped trying to reach her body and slowly stopped trying to reach her heart. My mind traveled back to other pains I had known. I remembered a woman I once loved deeply, whom I trained in nursing with my own money. She left me for another man without looking back. That wound had healed poorly. Now it was open again. I began to fear women and love itself. I asked myself why loving deeply always ended in pain. Still, I held on to my faith. I told myself that a Christian man must endure. But endurance began to feel like slow death. I became quiet, distant, careful. My wife noticed the change, but did not understand it. She thought I was withdrawing because her plans had failed me. She did not know my heart was bleeding. At that point, I began to think of leaving, not out of anger, but to save what was left of my soul. As the days moved on, I stopped calling her to the dialogue table, not because I stopped caring, but because every meeting left me more broken. I noticed something strange. The more silent I became, the more powerful she seemed. She spoke freely. She decided things alone. My opinions no longer mattered. I felt like a guest in my own home. Yet I still woke early to work. I still paid bills when I could. I still cared for our child with gentle hands. Deep inside, I hoped she would notice my pain and ask what was wrong, but she never did. Silence became our new language. At night, I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to her steady breathing. I wondered how two people could share a bed and feel like strangers. I also wondered if staying quiet was wisdom or fear. Many times, I wanted to shout my truth, but I remembered my faith and chose calm instead. Still, calm did not bring peace. It only buried the pain deeper. I began to feel something dangerous growing inside me. It was not anger, it was emptiness. And emptiness can make a man lose himself without knowing. I started asking hard questions. Was I still safe here? Was my mind still whole? Or was I slowly disappearing while trying to be a good husband? Around this time, my body began to react to the stress. I felt tired even after sleeping. My chest felt tight on some mornings. Small things made me forgetful. I knew something was wrong. A man can carry pain, but only for so long. One evening, I sat alone outside, watching people pass by. Families laughed. Couples talked freely. I felt like life was happening somewhere else. That was when I remembered my mentor. He was the man who, together with his wife, sponsored our wedding. He was older, calm, and wise. He had watched my life from a distance. I wondered if he noticed the change in me. A few days later, he called. His voice was gentle but serious. He asked how my home was. I tried to answer lightly, but he paused me. He said, "You sound tired." Those words broke a wall inside me. For the first time in a long while, someone noticed. He invited me to come and see him, not with my wife, just me. I felt fear and relief at the same time. Fear of speaking the truth, relief that someone cared enough to ask. That night, I knew something important was about to happen. When I visited my mentor, his house felt calm. His wife welcomed me warmly and offered food, but I could not eat much. We sat quietly for a moment. Then my mentor asked me to speak freely. He said there would be no judgment. Slowly, words came out of me like water from a broken pot. I told him everything. The constant fights, the false beliefs, the lack of respect, the hidden age, the dead bedroom, the old heartbreaks. I told him how I feared women now, how I feared love, how I felt like I was losing myself while trying to stay good. He listened without interrupting me. His wife watched me with kind eyes. When I finished, the room was quiet. I expected advice quickly, but my mentor stayed silent. That silence was heavy. It made me uneasy. I wondered if I had spoken too much. Then he looked at me deeply, not like a judge, like a father. I felt small and exposed.
I realized this was not just about marriage anymore. This was about my life, my mind, and my future. Whatever he would say next, I knew it would change the way I saw everything. After a long silence, my mentor finally spoke. His voice was calm but firm. He said something I did not expect. He said, "My son, the safety of your life is paramount." Those words hit me hard. I had always thought marriage meant endurance at all costs. I thought suffering quietly was holiness. But he explained gently that no vow should destroy a man's mind or health. His wife added that silence can kill slowly. She said love should not feel like constant fear. They did not tell me to leave immediately. They did not tell me to stay. They told me to look at myself honestly. They asked if I still felt safe emotionally. They asked if I still recognized myself. I could not answer easily. Tears filled my eyes. For the first time, I allowed myself to accept that I was hurting badly. The mentor reminded me that God values life. He said peace is not the same as pretending. That night, I left their house lighter but confused. I had been given permission to choose life, not just endurance. As I walked home, I wondered what this new understanding would cost me. I also wondered if my wife would ever see the truth I carried so quietly.
Back at home, I began to change in small ways. I stopped forcing conversations. I stopped begging to be understood. I focused on my work, my health, and my child. I prayed differently now, not asking God to fix my wife, but asking Him to guide my steps. My wife noticed the change. I was calmer, firmer, less available for arguments. This unsettled her. She asked fewer questions but watched me closely. I could sense fear in her eyes for the first time. Not fear of losing money or control, but fear of losing me. Yet she still did not apologize. The old lie still lived in her heart. I remembered my mentor's words often. The safety of your life is paramount. They echoed in my mind when doubt came. I was no longer rushing to leave, but I was no longer dying to stay. I stood in between, choosing wisdom over emotion. Unknown to me, this quiet change was already shifting something bigger. Truth has a way of rising slowly, even when buried for years. And soon, what was hidden in her heart would begin to surface, whether she was ready or not. As weeks passed, my calm became louder than arguments. I spoke less, but my actions were clear. I focused on my child, waking early to feed him, holding him when he cried. I kept my distance from my wife without being rude. This confused her. She was used to my explanations and my efforts to fix things. Now I was steady and quiet. One evening she asked why I had changed. I told her gently that I was tired and needed peace. She did not like that answer. She said I was acting strange. I did not argue. Inside me, something was settling. I began to sleep better. My chest felt lighter. I realized how much noise I had lived with before. My mentor called again to check on me. I told him I was trying to follow his counsel. He warned me to stay alert. He said change often brings reactions. That night, I noticed my wife talking on the phone more often. Her tone was worried. I did not listen closely, but I sensed something shifting. For the first time in a long while, I felt I was standing on solid ground. I did not know where this path would lead, but I knew I was no longer walking blindly. Sometimes the bravest step is not moving forward or backward, but standing still until truth catches up.
One afternoon, my wife came home unusually quiet. She avoided my eyes and went straight to the bedroom. Later, she came out and sat across from me. Her voice was softer than usual. She asked if I was planning to leave her. The question surprised me. I told her I was planning to live, not to fight. She looked confused. I could see fear hiding behind her words. She said people were talking. She said she heard I was seeking advice from elders. I did not deny it. I told her wisdom was better than silence. She became defensive and repeated the old story again. She said I was angry because of money and status. This time I did not react. I simply said that was never true. My calm unsettled her more than anger ever did. She went quiet. That evening she barely ate. I could sense her mind working. Lies are strong until truth stops reacting to them. That night I prayed quietly. I asked God to protect my heart from bitterness. I asked for clarity, not victory. I slept with a strange peace. I did not know it yet, but her world was starting to crack. When lies lose their power, fear takes their place, and fear often forces truth into the open. A few days later, my mentor invited both of us to his house. This surprised my wife. She hesitated but agreed. On the way, the car was silent. At the house, his wife welcomed us warmly. We sat together like family, but the air was serious. My mentor spoke gently. He asked my wife how she saw the marriage. She spoke carefully at first, then freely. She repeated her beliefs. She said she felt used. She said she felt older and afraid. When she mentioned money again, my mentor raised his hand gently. He asked her one question. Did he ever ask you for your salary? She paused. She said no. Did he ever demand your brothers give him work? She shook her head. Silence filled the room. My mentor nodded slowly. He spoke about assumptions and fear. He spoke about how wounds from the past can poison the present. His wife added that hiding the truth at the beginning creates shadows later. My wife's eyes filled with tears. This was the first time someone calmly challenged her story without anger. I watched quietly. I felt both pain and relief. Pain because it took outsiders to say what I had lived. Relief because truth was finally standing on its feet.
After that meeting, my wife became withdrawn. She spoke less, cried more, and avoided me. I did not chase her. I remembered my mentor's advice. Give space. Let truth walk. One evening, she asked me why I stayed so calm, even when misunderstood. I told her I had learned that shouting does not heal wounds. She nodded slowly. That night, she slept facing away from me, but I sensed her restlessness. The next morning, she apologized for one small thing. It was not about the big issues, but it was new. I accepted it quietly. Change often starts small. Later that day, my mentor called me again. He warned me not to rush forgiveness or decisions. He said healing needs time and safety. He reminded me again that my life mattered. Those words stayed with me. I began to think about my future clearly, not just as a husband, but as a man and a father. I thought about the example I was setting for my child. I realized something important. Staying in pain teaches children to accept pain. Peace must be real to be taught. That understanding settled deep in my heart. I knew a final choice would come soon. One quiet evening, my wife finally spoke openly. She admitted she had always feared being abandoned because of her age and past. She said she believed protecting herself meant never admitting fault. She said she thought love was a transaction. Her words were heavy. I listened without interrupting her. When she finished, I thanked her for speaking. I did not promise anything. I told her I needed time. That honesty surprised her. I went out for a walk alone. The night air was cool. I thought about my journey. I thought about endurance, faith, and wisdom. I thought about my mentor's words again. The safety of your life is paramount. I realized something clearly. Love that destroys peace is not holy. Sacrifice without truth is dangerous. That night, I prayed one of the hardest prayers of my life. I asked God not to save my marriage at all costs, but to save my mind and my future. When I returned home, I felt calm. The road ahead was still unclear, but fear no longer ruled me. I was no longer a man begging to be understood. I was a man choosing clarity, and that choice was about to change everything that followed.
The days after that prayer felt different. I was not angry. I was not hopeful either. I was simply clear. I began to prepare myself for any outcome. I spent more time planning my work and improving my skills. I wanted stability, not pity. My wife watched me closely. One evening, she asked if I had made a decision. I told her I was still listening to wisdom. That answer made her uneasy. She was used to control through assumptions. Now she could not read me. Around this time, my mentor asked to see me again, alone. When I arrived, he spoke plainly. He said love should not feel like slow death. He said a man who loses himself cannot save a home. He reminded me again that safety was not only physical, but emotional and mental. His wife added that forgiveness does not mean staying in harm. I felt tears rise, but I held them back. I finally said out loud what I had feared. I said I was breaking inside. Saying it made it real. My mentor nodded and said I had been strong for too long. Strength, he said, also means knowing when to stop bleeding. As I left their house, I felt supported, not pushed. The choice ahead was mine, but I was no longer alone.
Something inside me stood up straighter that day. At home, the tension grew quiet but heavy. My wife tried to be kinder. She cooked more, she spoke softly, but something felt rushed, like fear was driving her change. I noticed it and stayed calm. One night, she asked if we could start over. I asked her what that meant. She could not answer clearly. I realized then that love built on fear of loss is shaky. I did not reject her words, but I did not accept them fully. I told her healing takes time. She cried and said she was scared. I believed her, but I also remembered how long I had been scared alone. The next day, she called her sister and spoke openly. Later, she told me she admitted she was wrong about me. That was a big step. Still, I felt cautious. My mentor's voice echoed in my mind. Do not rush. I began to understand that clarity does not mean cruelty. It means truth with boundaries. I spent more time with my child, laughing and playing. Those moments reminded me why peace mattered. Children feel tension even when adults hide it. I promised myself that whatever decision I made, it would lead to a healthier life for both of us. The storm was calming, but the ground was still wet.
One afternoon, my mentor invited both families to a calm meeting. Not to judge, but to speak truthfully. This time, my wife spoke differently. She admitted she had hidden her age out of fear. She admitted she believed men only love for gain. Hearing her say it openly was painful, but freeing. My mentor spoke firmly. He said marriage cannot survive on suspicion. He said love is a gift, not a debt. His wife spoke to my wife gently, explaining how fear can turn into control. My wife cried openly. She apologized in front of everyone. It was the first full apology I had ever heard from her. I accepted it, but I did not rush to promise anything. I said healing would take time. That honesty surprised everyone. On the way home, my wife was quiet. Later, she thanked me for not shaming her. That night, I slept deeply. For the first time in a long while, my chest felt free. I knew something had shifted. Truth had finally entered the room fully. But truth does not always mean restoration. Sometimes it means decision. I was standing at that edge now, calm but alert. The following weeks were peaceful but uncertain. My wife tried to rebuild trust. She respected my space and spoke more honestly. I noticed the effort. Still, I checked in with myself often. Was I healing or just resting? My mentor encouraged me to watch carefully. He said change must last beyond fear. I agreed. One evening, my wife asked me a hard question. She asked if I still loved her. I paused before answering. I told her love does not disappear easily, but it changes when wounded deeply. She nodded, tears in her eyes. That honesty seemed to ground her. I felt no guilt for speaking truth anymore. I had learned that silence can be cruel to oneself. Around this time, I felt my strength returning. I smiled more. I worked better. I laughed with my child. I realized how much of myself I had lost trying to prove love. I did not know yet whether this marriage would fully heal or end respectfully, but I knew one thing fairly. I would not return to silent suffering. Whatever came next would be built on truth, safety, and wisdom. That realization was my true turning point.
One final meeting with my mentor sealed everything in my heart. He asked me a simple question. If nothing changed from today, could you live here in peace? I thought carefully before answering. I said I could live, but peace would depend on continued truth. He nodded. He said peace is not a moment, but a pattern. He advised me to set clear boundaries and watch actions over time. His wife reminded me that choosing myself was not selfish. I went home thoughtful but calm. That night, I spoke to my wife with clarity. I told her what I needed to feel safe and respected. I told her what I would no longer accept. She listened quietly and agreed. That was new. I did not celebrate yet. I knew consistency would tell the real story. As I lay down to sleep, I felt something rare. I felt hope. Not desperate hope, but steady hope. No matter how the future unfolded, I had reclaimed my voice and my worth. I was no longer the man they said wanted money. I was a man who wanted peace and truth, and that truth had finally begun to stand on its own feet. From that day onward, I became a careful observer of life inside the house. I spoke less and watched more. My wife was trying, and I could see it. She listened when I spoke. She asked questions instead of making conclusions. She stopped speaking badly about me to others. These changes were real, but my heart remained slow. Pain teaches patience in a hard way. I focused on my daily routine. I woke early, prayed quietly, and worked with my hands. I spent time with my child, teaching him small things and laughing with him. Those moments healed me more than words ever could. My mentor called often, not to push me, but to check my peace. He said consistency is louder than promises. One evening, my wife told me she had corrected the false story she once told her sister. She admitted she had judged me wrongly. Hearing this felt like fresh air entering a closed room. Still, I reminded myself that truth spoken once must be lived daily. That night, I slept calmly. For the first time, I felt I was no longer fighting to be seen. Truth was beginning to speak for me.
As weeks turned into months, the house felt different. Not perfect, but lighter. My wife became more open about her fears. She spoke about growing up alone and learning to protect herself too strongly. I listened with anger. I also shared my fears. I told her how past heartbreaks shaped me and how this marriage almost broke me completely. These talks were not easy, but they were honest. Honesty changed the tone of our home. My mentor reminded us that rebuilding trust is slow work. He said trust grows like a tree, not like grass. I watched closely to see if change would last beyond emotions. My wife respected my boundaries. She stopped trying to control the story and allowed truth to stand. One night, I realized something important. I was no longer afraid in my own house. That fear had quietly left. Whether the marriage fully healed or not, I had healed enough to breathe again. I thanked God for that peace. I understood now that clarity is a gift. Even when outcomes are uncertain, clarity brings strength. I was no longer confused. I was no longer shrinking. I stood as myself again. One evening, my wife sat across from me and spoke words I had waited years to hear. She said, "I am truly sorry." Not softly, not halfway, fully. She admitted she had misjudged my love. She admitted she hid behind fear and pride. She said she now understood that I never married her for money or gain. I listened quietly. I did not rush to respond. When someone breaks you slowly, healing must also be slow. I thanked her for the apology. I told her forgiveness was possible, but trust needed time. She accepted this without argument. That moment felt powerful, not because she apologized, but because I did not beg for it. Later, I spoke with my mentor again. He smiled gently and said truth always finds its season. He reminded me that choosing peace does not mean ignoring lessons. I went home that night and felt settled. Whether this marriage continued or changed form, I knew one thing. I had chosen life. I had chosen clarity. I had chosen wisdom. And those choices had already rewarded me with peace of mind.
With time, the atmosphere in the home continued to improve. My wife became more respectful and honest. We rebuilt slowly, step by step. Some days were good, some days were hard, but fear no longer ruled us. I felt strong again, not because everything was perfect, but because I knew my worth. I also learned to forgive myself for staying too long in pain. My mentor's words stayed with me always. The safety of your life is paramount. That sentence saved me quietly. I shared my story with a few close friends, hoping they would learn from it. I realized that many good people suffer silently because they think endurance is love. I promised myself never to lose my voice again. My child grew happier as the home grew calmer. That alone told me I was on the right path. Whether the future held full restoration or respectful separation, I knew I would face it with wisdom. I was no longer a man living under false stories. Truth had cleared my name. Peace had returned to my heart. And that peace was worth more than money, pride, or appearances. The story you have just heard is a beautiful African tale I heard long ago, retold to wake our minds. It teaches us that love without truth becomes dangerous, and endurance without safety can destroy a good person. It reminds us that silence is not always peace, and patience must walk with wisdom. In this story, a man learned that choosing life is not weakness, it is courage. He learned that assumptions can kill love, and honesty can revive it. He also learned that mentors are gifts, sent to speak when our own voices are tired. If you were the one in this story, what would you do? Would you endure quietly, or would you choose clarity and safety? I want to know your opinion, because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. May this tale help someone find their voice before it is too late. God bless you, and may courage guide your hands. Meanwhile, on the final screen, I am leaving you with one of the channel's most beloved folk tales. I am sure you'll love it. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.